Welcome back to another Buns video. Today we will be predicting how every team in the SEC East will finish, what the standings will be. In the background, by the way, I just had my top 10 linebackers video going just to have something for you guys to watch. But you guys seem to really like the last video I made on the SEC West predictions, so I thought I'd bring out this one. That's what I said I'd do, so I'm doing it. So, the East for years has been the weaker division. The West is dominated with Alabama, Auburn, LSU. But, recently they have made a bit of a comeback, a bit of a surge with Georgia leading the way. They still aren't the stronger, division, but they're getting there. They're getting there. So, how will they finish? Well, we'll look at that today. I'll start with the teams at the bottom, the teams that did worse, and work my way up, okay? So, at number 7, we have Tennessee. Most time this is Vanderbilt's spot. This is a place they own, but, is now Tennessee's new, spot. So I have them going 4-8, which is, really disappointing for them, especially considering they spent the big bucks to get Jeremy Pruitt as their coach. And this is most of this is not to blame on Jeremy Pruitt. Tennessee does not have much talent this year at all. Their one guy is Trey Smith, their offensive lineman, who, by the way, is an amazing lineman, and by the time he enters the draft, I think he will be nearly on par with Quentin Nelson. Not quite there, but I think he'll be darn near close. I mean, he's amazing, and he's only a sophomore this year. But, Tennessee, the reason I don't think they'll do very well is Jeremy Pruitt, he's an interesting coach. On a loaded team like Alabama, he'll do great. But his defenses play really aggressive. But on Tennessee, I feel his defense won't work. At Alabama, he blitzed 40% of the time. And that is not a number I contrived. It's from the Birmingham News. I read the newspaper. But, he blitzed 40% of the time when he was the defensive coordinator for Alabama. And I feel that will not work for Tennessee because, honestly, their secondary, now that they've lost Deshaun Elliott, is really weak. And you need a strong secondary to support a defense that blitzes that much. And it's not going to work for Tennessee. So, Tennessee going 4-8 there. Second, Vanderbilt going 4-8 as well. It'll be rough for them, but, they'll do better than Tennessee because at least they return their coach. Their coach will know where the team's at. They actually have a decent QB in Kyle Shermer. He's actually all right. He's pretty good. Maybe he'll get a good chance in the pros like Ryan Fitzpatrick did. We'll see. And then on defense, Charles Wright is by far their best player. Had 9 sacks and 43 quarterback pressures. Besides those two, though, they really have nothing. And it should be a rough year for Vanderbilt. I do have them beating Tennessee in the last game of the year, which is nice for them. And they actually start the year 3-2, but it'll be against teams like Tennessee State and Nevada. Down the stretch, it'll be rough for them. They'll lose 6 straight. But I think Vanderbilt won't finish last this year, so at least that's consolence for Vanderbilt fans. Next in the SEC East, we have Kentucky. And Kentucky has some extremely nice players. They actually have some stars like Benny Snell and Josh Allen, both of whom have first-round potential, more so on Josh Allen just because of his position. But Benny Snell, best running back in Kentucky history. Maybe I snubbed him from my top 10 running backs video. I don't know. They also have C.J. Conrad and Mike Edwards, a very good group. Unfortunately, though, they lost their starting QB, their coach is not good, and the rest of the team is pretty terrible. Their starting QB should be Gunnar Hoke, and I've literally never heard of this guy until I looked him up, and he is not good. So, Kentucky does have the stars to win the occasional game. I do have them actually getting a somewhat big upset at the end of the year against Louisville. I think, their big stars will shine like Benny Snell and Josh Allen. but they just will not be consistent enough to put up a good record because they do not have a good supporting cast around those stars, and their coach is terrible. So moving on. Next up, we have what should we call them? Missouri, and Missouri, they will be carried by Drew Lock. How Drew Lock goes, Missouri will go. And then going 6-6. They will finish higher than Kentucky because they will end up beating Kentucky. But I think Drew Lock's a very good QB. He just does not have enough around him to win more games. Their defense is going to be atrocious. I mean, Larry, they will have no one on that defense. So they will have a rough 4-week stretch there. The biggest win they will get, well, actually, I don't have them getting any huge wins. They actually have a pretty tough schedule. They get Alabama, which is rough. But, Missouri, I think they'll do all right. I remember a while there, they were just really, really good when they had, like, Shane Ray, and they were in the SEC Championship 2 years in a row just to get spanked, but at least they were in it. But now they'll just go 6-6. They're very mediocre. The receiving core should be all right, even though they lost Marcel Aikman and Javon Moore. But overall, this will be a team that has a great QB, but he's on a bad team. Now this is where things get interesting. These top 3 teams, and we'll go over South Carolina. But for the top two are so close. I'm not gonna present their records until I finish with them, and you'll see how it goes. But right now we'll do South Carolina. This is a very underrated team, I think. South Carolina, Will Muschamp is an underrated coach, I feel. When he was the coordinator for Saban at LSU, his defense was just amazing. Best defense in the country. The big thing about him that I like is his 4-3 defense. In college football, 4-3 is the way to go, I feel. Unless you're on a loaded team. The 4-3, the thing about it is it's a simpler scheme. And in college football, these guys are still young, so simpler the better, I kind of feel. And within reason. The 4-3 also, the thing about 3-4 is you need a lot of talent to run a 3-4 well, because those outside linebackers need to be able to pass rush and to be able to drop back into coverage and play comfortably backpedaling. That requires a lot of skill and ability. So I like that he runs a 4-3. I think the best teams in college football do run 4-3s. But now let's look at, South Carolina's team. South Carolina has a really underrated QB in Jake Bentley. They have a great wide receiver, top 5 wide receiver in college football for sure, and Deebo Samuel. The running back group, none of them you'll have heard of probably, but they're all good. They average over like 5 yards a carry. They do a running back by committee thing there though. On defense, DJ Wonnum is the one thing about South Carolina. Their weakness, their offense is really good. Their defense, the weakness of their defense will be they don't have a game-breaking defender. DJ Wonnum is their best player, and he's not really a game breaker like Myles Garrett was. He's not a game breaker. He's good. He's a good defender, but they don't have a game wrecker on that defense. So that will be their weakness. Looking at their schedule here, I do have them losing to Georgia and A&M. We already went A&M earlier. And final game of the season, losing against Clemson. But besides that, they win all their games. I do not. The big thing is they will beat Florida. And the big deal about that is, and you'll see how well Florida does in a little bit here. I think South Carolina will beat Florida. Well, I have them beating Florida, but we'll get to that when we go over Florida's record in just a little bit here. We'll go over that in just a little bit. I do not think they'll beat Clemson because Clemson's defense is full of game wreckers, unlike South Carolina's. Clemson has 4 legitimate first-round picks on that D-line, in Austin Bryant, Cleveland Farrell, Christian Wilkins, and Dexter Lawrence. And they're just a loaded team overall. So South Carolina going 9-3. Now this is where things get truly interesting at the top here between Florida and Georgia. And I think this will be an epic showdown between these two teams. Last year, Florida still did well, even though they had a ton of their players get injured, suspended. Callaway got suspended. It was ridiculous. Scarlett got injured, but they're all back now. And Florida, and I won't show either team's record. We'll go over both teams right now because it's so close, and then I'll reveal the records at the end just to keep it exciting here. But it's going to be close. So Florida and Georgia. Florida, they got Dan Mullen, and I think that's huge. I think Dan Mullen is an extremely underrated coach. He took a struggling program like Mississippi State, a program that had only gotten like 3 wins in several seasons, and turned them into a national contender. Took them to a #1 rank at one point. He develops QBs excellently. He turned Dak Prescott into a great QB, obviously, and he turned Nick Fitzgerald into an extremely good quarterback as well. Honestly, I feel he'll be able to make Felipe Franks or Emory Jones, the 4-star QB they just picked up. Either one, I think he'll be able to make either one into a pretty good QB, especially considering they'll have an excellent supporting cast around them. Really quick, we'll go over that Florida supporting cast. You got Jacob Copeland and Tyree Cleveland as your receivers, both of whom are playmakers. And your running back group is probably the deepest in the SEC, besides Alabama's probably, with Jordan Scarlett, Michael Pirine, and Malik Davis. And the offensive line is extremely good as well. So, honestly, I think this race between Florida and Georgia will be a lot closer than a lot of people predict. So, let's begin. Week 1, Florida and Georgia both win. It goes on and on and on. Georgia, I think, will beat Missouri, beat Tennessee. Really quick, let's go over Georgia too, shall we? I think DeAndre Swift will fill in well for Chubb and Michelle. The O-line will be good. Even though they lost win, they bring back some very good players. The defense will have talent, but I feel like they'll be a little out of sorts at times because a lot of these guys haven't played with together very long. Last season, Bellamy and Carter, they'd played with each other for like forever. They had great chemistry. That secondary had great chemistry, that linebacker group. But they lost all those guys. They returned guys who have a ton of talent. But honestly, I'm not so sure the chemistry will quite be there this season. And, their defense might get exposed at times. They might have to rely on Fromm to make big plays. And can Jake Fromm make big plays? I don't know. Jake Fromm's more of a don't turn the ball over type guy. And I don't know if he'll be able to make those big plays for Georgia. We'll see. But, so let's keep going. So, both teams win week 1, week 2, blah, blah, blah. I have Georgia beating Missouri, Tennessee, Vanderbilt. They end up being LSU, but then we'll be close. And so, now, first off, Florida loses to Mississippi State. That'll be Florida's first loss. It comes in week 6. And, I think Mississippi State will bring it against their old coach. I think they'll be excited to beat their old coach, and like I said before in the West video, I think it's going to happen. Nick Fitzgerald is not a totally consistent QB, but he'll bring it at times to play like the top QB in the country sometimes, like he did against Alabama last year when they almost beat Alabama. But so Florida loses to Mississippi State. Then Florida beats LSU and Vandy. Georgia beats Tennessee, Vandy, LSU, and now Florida and Georgia play. Huge game, national implications, and I have Florida winning this game. And, that might sound crazy, but hear me out. Dan Mullen's a great coach. Florida has game-breaking wide receivers in Copeland and Cleveland. Georgia does not. Their best receiver is Godwin, and he's more of a possession guy, honestly. So, and Georgia's defense has a lot of great talent, but Florida's defense is more cohesive, I feel. David Reese, great linebacker. Chauncey Gardner, maybe a best safety in the country. Zabari Zuniga, C.C. Jefferson, and all these guys have been playing together a lot. They have great chemistry. And I think that will end up beating Georgia. And plus, Florida has the best punter in the country in Johnny Townsend, which will make a good difference. But I think Florida will end up winning that game. And it sounds crazy. I think at that point in the season, with Dan Mullen is the coach, I think Florida will have the more dynamic QB. Whoever it is, I think they'll be more dynamic than Fromm. And that sounds crazy, but we'll see come that time of year. I'm very confident in Dan Mullen's quarterback developing abilities and his ability to balance his scheme around his quarterback. So then after that, So after Georgia loses to Florida, I have Florida beating Missouri. I have Georgia beating Kentucky. And, but now here things take a turn for Florida. I have them losing to South Carolina. And, why do I think they'll lose to South Carolina? Well, I think Dan Mullen has struggled against, what's-his-face's defenses, Muschamp's defenses in the past. And I think he'll do so again here. Muschamp, I think his 4-3 will, it's caused problems for Dan Mullen in the past. I think it will again here. And then I have Georgia beating Auburn. I think, that'll be a close game, but I think Georgia's defense should terrorize Auburn's weak offensive line. Okay, and then I have Georgia beating UMass, and Florida beating Idaho. So now we're in the last week here. Even though Florida is 10-2, they have control of the East, because even though they have one more loss than Georgia, since they beat Georgia, and Florida's only Florida, one of their 2 losses came against a West team. Sorry, it takes a lot of thinking. Florida would win the SEC East if they keep this record, if they don't lose this last game. And Georgia needs to win their game. So first off, I do have Georgia winning their game against Georgia Tech. So now they need to see, does Florida win or does Florida lose? It decides Georgia's whole fate. So the game that Georgia needs Florida to win, or Florida to lose, is against Florida State. And Florida State will have a new coach. But will be the end of the year. They are loaded with talent. They have Cam Akers, who could make a Heisman run. They have Brian Burns. They have talent everywhere. So, how will it go? And they have Francois. So, I think it'll be close. It's going to be close, honestly. Florida State's loaded with talent. And even though they have a new coach, at the end of the year, they should have a chemistry worked out. Even if they don't have the greatest coach, I think they'll have some form of cohesiveness because it's the last game of the year. They'll have gotten used to each other as a team. So how will it go? Well, I think Florida State will win the game. I think Florida will lose, Florida State will win. Those rivalry games, first off, are always unpredictable. FSU, they have talent everywhere. I think that talent will show up, and I think Florida will lose. And that's the way it's going to go. Georgia will win the SEC East. So I hope you guys enjoy the video. Please don't forget to like and subscribe. Love you lots. Buns out.